All right, how's it going, everybody? I just saw that Arrowhead released this little dev interview, so I wanted to check that out and get some hopefully good news, right? Let's see what they got to say.
Nice.
We're going to start off. For the observant people amongst us, they will have noticed that I am joined by somebody different today, which is good. Niklas,
Yeah.
you went on a stream, you said some things,
Yeah.
and people had opinions,
As
and
they
now
do.
we're lucky enough to have you sitting here.
Yes. It's good that maybe not always good that I say things, but it's good that people have opinions and that people care.
That's true. Today we've got some questions that have come from the propaganda commanders. You're kind enough to answer those, and we've got some questions that we've found from the community.
Just want to say sometimes it's not always good that I say things as man, if that isn't just the way it is. A man after my own heart.
So,
Spicy.
spicy. So I think without further ado, we're going to dive right into things with our first question here from Red Monster Thing. They ask, since you are the buff diver, can you buff the variable's durable damage and maybe slightly buff its ergonomics? I've specifically noticed a trend with the light pen guns having higher durable damage lately and better weapon handling. I understand that the variable is missing is a massive gun, so the ergonomics being slow feels somewhat justified, but I still want a smoother experience for my gun. Also, for research purposes, what you think is the most balanced gun? It would help me get a better idea of what you guys and the team think about where the balance should be.
Okay, fair enough on the questioning, but it's weird that it is phrased like noticing a trend about light pen having more durable damage. It's not just a trend, that was a patch note announcement. They explicitly stated they were trying to give the weapons differentiating roles and identities, and uh, increased durable damage for light penetrations was one of those changes that was expressly named. So uh, it's kind of a weird. I know Red Monster Thing is a YouTuber who does a lot of content and things. It's just it seems odd to me that someone in that position would not be familiar with that have as having already been a an explicitly noted design intention and change to light penetration. But anyway, just a little nitpick by me, I guess. My cranky pants mode must be active.
Oh, that's a tricky question. Um, so, for the durable damage of the variable, I will say fair point. I should have brought post-its. Uh,
I can make notes for you.
Good. I think that's a fair point. I think there are a few guns that we'll probably need to have a look at, and the variable is definitely one of them. When it comes to the most balanced gun, probably now I forgot the name of it, or I know the dev name of it.
The name will be added, but that is the gun that is the most balanced. What makes it so balanced?
It has some clunkiness to it, and if you get around, if you master the weapon, there's a good payoff at the end. It is usable enough if you just pick it up. It just feels good straight off the bat. But when you master it, it has like a good amount of depth and very nice like visceral feeling to it, because it has to feel good to use. It has to be easy to pick up and start having fun with, and it has to have like a good mastery ceiling. So I think that those are like some of the components to make something a good balanced and nice experience.
Thank you, Niklas. We're going to move.
I want to just back up and make sure I caught all of his question because it was a lot. And
buff diver, can you buff the very... I think without further ado, we're going to dive right into things with our first question here from Red Monster Thing. They ask, since you are the buff diver, can you buff the variable's durable damage and maybe slightly buff its ergonomics? I've specifically noticed a trend with the light pen guns having higher durable damage lately and better weapon handling. I understand that the variable is missing is a massive gun, so the ergonomics being slow feels somewhat justified, but I still want a smoother experience for my gun. Also, for research...
Yeah, I mean, wanting a smoother experience makes sense, but you got to remember, it is a special weapon, so it's not going to fit cleanly into any one category, and it can do assault rifle mode basically, full auto with low damage per shot, and then it has that single shot mode with notably increased damage per shot, which is like a souped up marksman rifle, and then it has that volley shot where it does all of the damage in one single shot with massive recoil, comically massive recoil, right? Uh, yeah, I mean, wanting a smoother experience, I mean, sure, it's fine to want that, but with virtually no acknowledgement of the special weapon features that it brings, I don't think that's a fair thing to want. I mean, maybe you could say it needs a little more durable damage to keep pace with the other light weapon pens, but at the same time, the ability to change its damage output style and one burst something like a Hulk in the back vents with a light pen weapon like that, there are a lot of trade-offs there that you have to consider. And I think that question of just wanting more ergonomics or whatever, and perhaps even the durable damage, I would need to run some numbers, but to me that seems like you just want your cake and you want to eat it too. And so yeah, I don't think that's a very reasonable request just offhand. Now maybe if I go back and I look into the breakpoints and the number values and stuff for the variable versus other light pen weapons, and I might change my mind, but just off the cuff, it's like, dude, it can already do 3 different roles in one weapon as a light pen. I, it just seems a little like you're asking for too much to me for that special weapon.
Research purposes, what you think is the most balanced gun? It would help me get a better idea of what you guys and the team think about where the balance should be.
Oh, that's a tricky question. Um, so, for the durable damage of the variable, I will say fair point. I should have brought post-its.
I can make notes for you.
Good. I think that's a fair point. I think there are a few guns that we'll probably need to have a look at, and the variable is definitely one of them. When it comes to the most
Yeah, I mean, good on Nicholas. That's a pretty, mm, it's kind of like a default answer that you can always give. I don't blame him for making that kind of commentary because, in his position, if you say, "Oh yeah, we should definitely do X, Y, or Z," then you get the community freaking out whenever that doesn't happen exactly the way they want. Or if he goes back to the development team and they're crunching numbers and it's like, "Hey man, we really can't do that without breaking these other things." So it's a very pointed question and it's fine to ask that kind of stuff. Um, but it might be a little bit too technical to really expect a good answer, especially for something that is a special weapon category like the variable with its 3 different modes and stuff.
balanced gun, probably now I forgot the name of it, or I know the dev name of it.
The name will be added, but that is the gun that is the most balanced. What makes it so balanced?
It has some clunkiness to it, and if you get around, if you master the weapon, there's a good payoff at the end. It is usable enough if you're If you just pick it up, it just feels good straight off the bat. But when you master it, it has like a good amount of depth and very nice like visceral feeling to it, because it has to feel good to use. It has to be easy to pick up and start having fun with, and it has to have like a good mastery ceiling. So I think that those are like some of the components to make something a good, balanced, and nice experience.
Thank you, Niklas.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. You can look if you look carefully at pretty much all of the weapons in the game, and I say pretty much all because nothing is going to be perfectly balanced, right? That's why balance updates happen. But my reading of the weapons, based on the gameplay feel and how they, play out, and looking at numbers and values from the wiki page for damage output versus armor, there are tens or dozens or even hundreds of variables that they have to consider whenever they create a new weapon and they balance it, because you've got different armor types, you've got angles, you've got penetration, you've got durable and like the standard impact damage, right? Or ballistic damage, or depending on the type of weapon. And so, yeah, I mean, what he said there pretty much perfectly encapsulates their design philosophy of weapons having trade-offs. It's a little bit clunky, but it punches hard, and it's a little bit tricky to get familiar with and really to capitalize on it. And, the Deadeye, it is a very strong gun, but it's not by default going to be the best gun for every situation. And I don't think you could really make the case that there is one single weapon that is the best for any situation. And when I say any situation, I mean all armor penetrations you might need, all damage outputs you might need, all ammo economies you might need, at all ranges you might need, right? So, uh, a recoilless rocket at close range is not a good option, right? Because you're going to die in the process. Or if you use it versus a group of enemies, maybe if you use the high explosive mode, it's better. Uh, and then concurrently, right? Anything else, like, you would do a better job in terms of efficiency, at least if you used like a Liberator assault rifle to kill a bunch of basic troopers versus your recoilless rocket, just to make an extreme comparison. And I get the sense when I watch a lot of material, a lot of content on this topic, a balanced topic, and like weapon ranks and all this stuff, and internet forums, that people just they have like one or two scenarios in their mind. They're like, well, this is S tier because it does this thing. It's like, yeah, but what about all the other situations where it's gonna suck, And so, if you're talking about a primary weapon, in this case the Deadeye, with its penetration level and all that stuff, like, yeah, uh, it has a very nice role that it can perform, and it has its own trade-offs within that. So that's interesting to hear, though, that he thinks that the Deadeye is one of their most well-balanced weapons. And I wonder if that is specific to primaries, secondaries, or if that includes support weapons. Either way, pretty cool.
We're going to move on. Our next question comes from Demo Storm. Any chance we get improvements to the galactic map to explain gambits or best opportunity to dive planets, MO or no MO? It seems like a lot of people don't know what is really going on without outside information from one of the apps, and would be super helpful to have our own Joan of Helldivers to your Joel of Destruction explaining some of the numbers work would also be great, as I know a few of us can't figure out if it's best to A, do everything in difficulty 10, or B, speed run the main and get out actually best min max.
Good question. It is something we have talked a lot about here in Arrowhead, and I guess the simple answer is yes, we want to improve it. We have a bunch of ideas, but the community's apps and pages for this are surprisingly good. You know, they've done a good job, and we want to we kind of want to catch up to that, and eventually, like also deepen that type of gameplay and understanding. But I will say that it will probably take some time. We don't have an abundance of capacity to expand on those features while also supporting all the stuff we are doing in the future, and just the cleaning house that we're doing now of just like fixing all the bugs, etc. So yes, eventually, but we want to.
Great to hear.
Yeah, that's a perfectly reasonable response. And it's really cool that, the developers are not only aware of the community efforts and applications that are available, but, he's praising them. I mean, it's awesome. He's impressed by the dedication and the tools that the community create, right? And it totally makes sense to me that, they're limited by their capacity. If you look back at the history of the game, right, it took 8 years to develop, and in that period of time, the original engine lost support, and then so that changed things. And then you had like the PSN ID being required, and then removed and required and removed, and all that stuff. Then you had the push to Xbox expansion, and then of course, the game exploding to more than 10x its original design size, despite uh, projections all around, that it would be a max of like 45,000 players. Um, that causes a lot of problems with your pipelines and your timelines and your plans. And even if you make a butt ton of money, like it doesn't allow you to just automatically like hire a bunch of new personnel and just start whipping out all this new content and fixes and stuff, because you got to remember, even if you have the money, it still takes probably 6 months to get one new crew member up to speed on how the systems work, and then to be able to actually start, being productive. I mean, that's just how it is in pretty much any industry that deals with complicated stuff, like it's not just a game development issue. Complex systems are called complex for good reason, right? And yeah, so I totally believe him when he says, they want to do all this new cool stuff, but, everything requires time and resources, and uh, resources is not just money, it's also trained personnel, right? So I think that the game is going to continue to see a lot of meaningful updates, and we'll probably be seeing more of those as time goes on, uh, assuming that, the maintenance and performance issues that they've been focusing on remain in a stable state.
Demo Storm goes on to ask, any thought into looking into improving or changing some of the older weaponry? War bonds, I know, are a great way to introduce new stuff, but I think introducing new mechanics to what we have also goes a long way, i.e. grenade launcher having different rounds or stratagem customization in general.
So there's a bunch of questions in that. So going back, we have gone back many times to fix old things that aren't really that interesting, or maybe this kind of felt like it been left behind. The thermite grenade, for example, is one that for a long time was pretty useless. But there is like, if we put up in a lot of work into it, and maybe like remake functions, add ammunition, which we have done also to like the recoilless and the autocannon, etc. But there is some time needed to do that, which means that there's less time for us to do new things. So there's a question of like, how much do you want to just improve old thing versus like you could take that time and make a new thing. Does that. You also want to. Some guns are fun to have like flexibility in, but you don't want to make a gun that does everything, because then you don't need to bring another gun. and you got everything in one. Because it's a game of having tools. It's like how good you are is kind of like what kind of toolbox do you construct? Do you know what you'll be facing, what challenges you're gonna have, what team you have, and like what's your combined toolbox, what's your personal toolbox, and if too many weapons are like Swiss Army knives, then you just bring that. Plus, if you make like a grenade launcher, if you take the standard grenade launcher and give it like, oh, here's every type of different grenade, then we also can't make another grenade launcher, because then this one does it all. And then you also kind of lose identity. It's like, is this a normal grenade launcher? Is this a sci-fi grenade launcher? Is it what kind of thing is it? Is it everything? Because an everything sandwich is kind of like a nothing sandwich. It's like has no real identity. It's just like a bunch of stuff crammed into one. So, but we have some old war bonds that are a bit lagging behind. It will require some thought process to like, okay, how do we make this interesting? We don't want to just buff it so it's just the best war bond. I mean, Democratic Detonation went from being one of the worst, if not the worst, to be basically the best. And that's one way of doing it, but we don't want to get into like this buffing war and then like everything is incredibly good and now we just increase the power level of the whole game. And then you will have other war bonds that are lagging behind. So it's something we're constantly looking at it. We are constantly trying to get everything into a similar like viability level that you want to bring. That you basically, no matter what you take, you're not like making a bad decision. The decision should be what toolbox are you building, and is everything a good tool for solving a specific problem? A long answer to, and I probably missed some of the question there even.
I think a great answer, and I think we definitely appreciate your transparency. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I really like his answer here because it's pretty consistent with the overall design philosophy that Arrowhead seems to be attempting to accomplish over time. And that is, like he gave the analogy here of a tool and a toolbox, right? Like what problems are you trying to solve within the mission, right? And you can have up to 4 people with different specialties. And like he said, and this kind of goes back to the variable question by Red Monster thing earlier, is it's like, you got to keep in mind that weapon is considered a special weapon and it can act like an assault rifle, a marksman rifle, and a, I don't know what you would consider that volley mode, but just a massive damage blast, right? Um, and so with that degree of flexibility, like you've got 3 different types of engagements at least that you can handle with that, and you can have different scopes on it, right? So when you also start wanting, oh, I want the ergonomics to be smoother and things like that, it's like, well, I mean, dude, you're already dealing with a weapon that is highly adaptable. So, and then, there's questions like the grenade launcher, if it could do too many things, then like now you can do everything with that. Why anything else, right? And so one of the big things in this game, and to some extent in any game, is you have to build and design things with certain constraints in mind. Otherwise, you risk making everything homogeneous, and then it becomes boring, like he was indicating. And all of the nuances behind not just game development, but design philosophy. There's a lot that goes into that, and I think that it's easy for most of us to kind of be like, oh, I really like this thing and I wish it was better, and could kind of like forget about, the global consequences of those kinds of requests. But, fair enough, right? I mean, it's a lot. It's a big game. But I like his answer, and I like that he's trying to really communicate, like, we have to try and keep the constraints to keep things interesting and to maintain decent variety and weapon identity so that it's not just, every weapon is the same weapon with a different skin.
Moving on, Strider of Valor asks, my broad question is more of a blanket of things, but mainly from the 60-day patch to the Eruptor, Ultimatum, and now Coyote and future balancing patch coming, what principles and communication methods do you all desire to improve and ensure in communication to the Helldiver community is clear, honest, and transparent?
Good question. So I think first we have to start with establishing like what are we doing, why are we doing it. So when we change something, people need to know why. Like if they know what we're aiming for, then they can say like, ah, you're hitting that target. If they don't know what we're aiming for, then they will set up their own target and say, well, you're missing my target. And then they'll be unhappy with it. So when it comes to all of those things, we're just like, oh, they, at some point in time, either when they were introduced or at some point, they were like, we toned them down a little bit. Kind of almost needed a whiteboard, but I don't have one. I'll use interpretive. I'll use interpretive dance instead. So basically, we've gotten to a place where us and I think the majority of the community agrees it's like this kind of power level is like now we're happy. Here the game feels good. It seems to make sense. We're having a good time. At 60-day patch or before it, we were like, the game versus what you can do felt like you were a little bit underpowered, and we bumped it up a bit, and then like people were like, yeah, this is better. Like it will feel better. We don't know exactly what you're aiming for yet, but this is better. And at a certain point, we feel like we got kind of close to at around where we are now. It's like there are some bumps, but like the power level is roughly like in a good place, and we can shake hands with the community and be like, yes, the game experience here is good. If we get stuff that pop up from this, and like, oh, this the Master Blaster 2000 is like incredibly better than all the other weapons, then you get like using that one, everything else might feel worse, but also you're kind of playing another game. Like here's the game that you're playing that's above everyone else where you can do more. And some people will be like, yes, that's the game I want to play. Why take that away from me? But then we'll also have like, some people don't want that. They want to use the other stuff. And if you come into a lobby and players are like, here we're going for it. Difficulty 10, like doing everything, having a breeze, destroying predator strain, everything. Then they will say, oh, you joined the lobby, take the Master Blaster 2000. And he's like, no, I don't want to play with that. And I say, well, then you're gone, kick. Like we had in the beginning of the game with like, oh, you didn't bring a railgun to the lobby, and then you got kicked because they're like, oh no, you're just making bad choices. There was some indication of that during the prime era of the Incendiary Breaker 2. And then you get like, now we start getting a separation of community where some players say like, no, we're playing on this power level. The rest of the weapons and gear are on this power level. We want to be up here. And then maybe some people are like, oh, we play with the Constitution and they're playing down here. The Constitution is kind of a mean weapon anyway, but the more separations you get, like you kind of get a divide in the player base. They start fighting with each other. We kind of want everyone to be like, I'll take the stuff that I want to play with, and everyone's like else is like, yeah, cool, that's good because everything kind of works. So that's why we don't want too many like, oh, you must have this thing. It's like, oh, we're playing the automatons. Bring the ultimatum to destroy stratagem jammers, and bring this thing to destroy that. And like, this is a must-have when playing on this difficulty against these things, because you also created a very repetitive gameplay where you just like, oh, there's a bunch of stuff that you must play with. So your gameplay experience also keep becoming the same all of the time. And then you get tired of the game because you say like, oh, I want to play the game optimally, but there's maybe only one way to do that. Then that's how you will play. And then the kind of game that we built where you just have a big toolbox, just like Well, for you, there's not a big toolbox. There's just a small toolbox, which you will get tired of. And those players might go then, well, bring everything else up. So I can play my power game, my like bigger power fantasy than everyone else power fantasy. And then we just brought everyone up there, and then we keep bringing it up. And after a while, we just have to like, hey, I guess we need to buff the enemies too. And then we just keep getting higher and higher numbers for no apparent reason. Because at some point we have to say like, game is good here, shake hands. And I think we kind of are around there with some nooks and crannies. But that's what we're trying to achieve, and it's because of all the things that happens when you don't achieve it, which is not immediate and understandable for everyone, because they might just see, well, for me that doesn't matter. It might matter for others, and it might matter for the community as a whole, because you might all only notice it when the community turns toxic. And then you say, it used to be a good community here, but now it's just toxic. I'ma leave. And maybe you didn't understand why it turned toxic. And we're trying to always figure this out. And not saying we have all the answers, but we're trying to make sure this doesn't happen as best as we can.
I think that was a fantastically in-depth answer, and I'm sure people are going to be very grateful, and we'll probably follow up with lots more questions, which is a good thing for the next time we're chatting.
Yeah, I expect this ongoing conversation for a long time.
Ongoing conversations are the best. Strider.
Yeah, I think he nailed it with that response. You know, one of the things that I really don't envy Arrowhead at all about is trying to manage obviously the game balance and the meta, right? What's optimal and player expectations and things like that. And you know, just in my small observations, right, compared to the data and observation information he has, you know, players, you know, where he mentioned about trying to identify like what is it they're aiming for, and then so players can determine like, okay, you're hitting it or you're missing it, right? Like when I look at this game from the day that it launched, it was very clear that it's a squad-based co-op shooter, and it states it expressly like you need to use good tactics and cooperation to beat the hardest difficulties. So to me, it's very obvious, or at least it appears obvious to me, and I could be mistaken, but to me, it looks like a lot of players don't want to have to use cooperation and communication and things like that at the highest difficulties, and then they want to complain about X, Y, or Z. And, you know, to be fair, the game hasn't always had great balancing, but it's usually doable. Pretty much everything has been doable with good cooperation, with a few exceptions here and there, right? And you know, whenever you think about the life of the game, or when I think about the life of the game, it's like, remember Malevelon Creek was absolutely insane, and you were getting blasted all the time. There were tons and tons of enemies, and you were getting ragdolled all the time and all that stuff. But we still did it. Like, it was crazy chaotic and fun for the most part, right? And then you look at something like the War Strider when it came out, with it had a lot of ragdoll and a lot of power and stuff, even though it was predictable, right? I think that it was mainly there were too many of them spawning, and its fire rate was a little bit too fast. And then the people were crying about nerfs and wanting, you know, a weak's point and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, it's in a decent place right now. I still think the main issue was that there were too many of them, and that, like, with coordination and stuff, teamwork was fine. And so the problem was, like, at lower difficulties, there were still a freaking ton of them, right? But, you know, there's plenty of ways that they could have balanced it. And the way that they have done it now is fair enough, I guess, right? But that was really just a fraction of what it was like during Malevelon Creek. And this time around, the player base seemed to lose their collective minds, or at least there was a loud portion of players that behaved that way. And then, of course, giving suggestions on what they think needed to happen to fix it. And, you know, I'm generally don't think the weak points were necessary. I mean, this isn't an enemy of escalating uh, threat and menace. It doesn't need to have all the same mechanics necessarily as everything else. It's okay to break the mold sometimes. But anyway, yeah, I don't envy Arrowhead's position of trying to intake all of this feedback because, they're at least one of their core philosophies is a game for everyone is a game for no one, and I can see what they were going for with the squad co-op and all that stuff. And I really enjoy that, and if I get my butt handed to me at a higher difficulty because I'm not using comms or cooperating or whatever, then like, okay, well that's probably just my fault and my failure um, to work effectively. And then of course you have the whole issue of people optimizing the fun out of games and things like that. And it's like, hey man, this isn't my job, right? So if it's not the job for most people, like have some fun. But anyway, I like his answer, and I hope that they're able to maintain that delicate uh, power dynamic that he described, and that they don't just pull their hair out from listening to opinions that are not taking into account like realistic constraints and design philosophies and all this kind of stuff. Because those are a dime a dozen.
Leader of Valor does go on to say, I want to add that I deeply respect you and every dev that works on this game, and I highly value your principles of family and aiming not to have a meta, but a variety of fantasies players can play. Thank you for all your tireless work and effort you have done to continually make such a great game.
No, thank you. He also brings up a good point there with all the fantasies. We try to deliver a lot of those, and that is also the thing. Meta usually works against you wanting to play your fantasy because meta constricts your choices. And he puts out a great point there. We want you to have many different cool experiences in this game and all being equally viable.
Moving swiftly forward, we have a question from the Gundam Boy. Is there any plan to make the mechs we have last longer in the field, being able to fix and supply it to last in the field? What upgrades can we expect to see?
So we have plans. We are looking at extending like vehicle gameplay. Like people remember from playing the first game, we had loads of more vehicles. Not saying we necessarily will bring back all of them, but it would be fun to bring back some of them and kind of extend how much you can do with vehicles, and all the like nooks and crannies of it, like can you reload stuff, can you repair stuff, not guaranteeing that you will be able to, because they kind of work as like a what's it called, like a temporary almost buff. It's all like they throw in vehicles, they expect them to break, run out of ammo. Like, should you take care of it or just get a new one? Like it's the wasteful economy type of thing. But we are definitely experimenting a bit with that. I'm not going to make any promises, but there's a lot of people in the studio that also wants that kind of stuff. So if we can make good gameplay with it, we will definitely look into it.
Awesome. Next question.
I see you, Gundam Boy. I feel you. I feel you, brother. I'm sure we're going to get some good stuff as time goes on.
Question for you, Niklas, comes from Dr. Poop Love. Are there any plans to buff the one true flag? As much as it can be a morale booster, it would be cool if it had some sort of team buff or area buff applied to users near a planted flag.
We're trying to keep the game pretty grounded in terms of what you see and understand, and not too much hidden stuff, or that most of the game plays in the HUD or the UI. So I know we have some like effects that you kind of have to know. Like you have the Democracy Protects armor, which is it's plot armor, we call it. That's the funny stuff with it. But it's a little bit of magic. So the question is like, would the one true flag have an effect like that? How would you show it? We don't want to put weird markers in the game that would break the immersion. So we're not really actively looking at it because it's the one true flag. It's the flag, and it's also just the flag. It's not a magic flag. It should raise your morale anyway when you're there as a player. But we don't want to do too much of this, like, oh, it's a cool thing, and now you have like effects that you don't really understand why there is like that effects exist. You could argue, as that's why I brought it up, like Democracy Protects has kind of like a magic effect almost, but I'm not sure I want to do the one true flag into maybe a competitive option. It's more like, you want to bring a flag? Here's a flag. Like, is it good to bring a flag into a war zone? Maybe not. It's maybe not your first weapon of choice, charging the enemy lines. Not saying no though. Like, if we get something that makes sense and is fun, maybe someone in the community might have a great idea for it, and then we read it and just like, yeah, that would actually be awesome. But then I won't say no to do it. Like, this is not a hill I'm dying on in any way.
You heard it here first. If you have that idea of how we involve that with the one true flag, open for it, and we'll pick it up next time.
I hear you there, Dr. Pooplove. And I totally understand what Niklas is getting at as well, I mean, they're trying to keep it within as he described it, a grounded, believable, area, right? And, people bring up the Democracy Protects and plenty of other stuff, and it's like, yeah, man, like, if you want to poke holes in it, you can, but you need to keep in mind, like, what they're trying to do, like, overall, right? And it's very fun. Democracy Protects, I think, really just kind of is a nice, neat way to lean into the satirical sort of action hero thing of like, they say they've been inspired by a lot of like 80s movies and stuff like that, right? Like action film movies. And there's all this over the top stuff. And it's like, how did that guy survive that like 30-foot drop into pavement or whatever, right? Like, like Resident Evil games or, you name it, right? Any of those old timey action hero movies where it's just like none of that stuff believable within the game world, but they've got certain constraints, and it's just crazy nonsense. And I think the coin flip toss of surviving is reasonable within at least the satirical nature of the game, right? Without crossing too much into feeling magical. To me, at least, it doesn't feel magical. It just feels like silly action hero moments. Like, I can't believe you survived that, right? In fact, I remember the first time I was playing the game and I'd used the Sief artillery and I saw the beacon and I didn't know how this stuff worked yet. And I was like, wait a minute, did that say mini nuke? And then everything exploded. Everybody died except for me because I was wearing a Democracy Protects armor, and I had 1 HP. And it was like, oh my God, that was crazy and hilarious. However, with regard to the flag, I agree with what he said. And to that note, the thing that came to my mind was, what if we just made the flag a signal booster for our stratagems? So if you have the flag, it served to boost your signal through jammers and ion storms and things like that, so that, let's say, maybe one of your stratagems at random in a similar fashion to the scrambler um, was available for you to use. So like every 3 to 5 seconds, one of your stratagem options become available to anybody within, let's say, 30 meters. It gives you the option to call in a stratagem, even if you're inside of a jammer or inside of an ion storm. So that would be a limited scope application. It would make sense from sort of a sci-fi and technical perspective because of having a bigger antenna, basically, to reach your super destroyer, right? So that might be something that could work. And you could implement a visual indicator however you want, but obviously it just being the flag might kind of clue people in after a while. But I'd say that's an idea. Make it a very minor counterplay to being jammed, either by ion storms or automaton jammers, or the maybe you could say the cognitive disruptor too, where one of your stratagem's options is periodically not scrambled. Yeah, that might work, but that's just me riffing.
Moving on, we have some questions from the community now. Will we have missions where we fight alongside the SEAF on an offensive or defensive, pretty much trench war conflicts, or fighting alongside the main bulk of SEAF troops?
It's one of the things of like the universe kind of puts it out there that this should be able to happen. Because you have the super armed forces in the game, you have the Helldivers. Should that be able to happen at some point? Yeah, probably. Do we know exactly when? Maybe internally, but or if we even are gonna do it. But it's one of those things like when you look at the universe and the promise of the Helldivers universe, um, we want to, at some point in time, be able to deliver most of the things that the universe promises. So maybe.
Feeling pretty good about that answer right there.
Trench warfare, that'd be pretty awesome. I mean, he sort of hinted that maybe they're planning for something along those lines already. And we have the cave system, right? And then we got the magma planets. Who knows what's going to happen with the Illuminate, but clearly they have the technology to do it. It's just a matter of time and resources and all that stuff. So, good question.
Goes on to ask, any plans for increasing the max level past 150? I think you get this question all the time.
I do.
He sounded so tired when he responded to that level max question.
At some point, most likely. So, I mean, why not?
Again, just dropping truths here. I love it.
Yeah.
How long did it take y'all to settle on a Hive Lore design for HD2?
Honestly, not long at all. It was surprisingly simple to do. Like not simple to do, but to say like, we want this. It was some people got like a bit of sweat when they started seeing the scale that we brought it up to, and just like guys, what about performance, and what about will everything break, and like how does the game handle this? We solved all of that, but we also said like, if we can't get it this big and this crazy, then we shouldn't do it, and then we just worked from there. But no, we were all aligned pretty fast.
Quick alignment. That's a good sign. Ask the question. You asked us to get back with you on the question of silencers working as intended. So I'm asking, are silencers working as intended? Will we get silencers that work like the game silencers?
So they're actually pretty much where they should be at the moment. In the latest patch, we got some functionality in where if you, for example, you use a suppressed weapons and you miss the enemy, they don't immediately react, which I'm not sure if we mentioned that actually, but they do have a smaller radius of sound to attract enemies, and they don't immediately alert them if you miss. They still alert them if you hit. But this is part of, I guess here we kind of come into a bit of Hollywood movies versus reality. We have suppressors. A suppressor is still an impressive amount of decibels when they shoot. They're not silenced. You can't do the in movies, oh, they run around in like amongst people and shoot suppressors. It's just like, no, they're still over 100 decibels. Like it's not a silent weapon. It is less loud than a non-suppressed weapon, but that's how suppressors work. We take great detail in weapon mechanics and like how all these things work, as you can see in our weapons in our game. And it would also be weird if we like, oh no, this weapon's actually like fully silent. It's like there's no weapon that's the most silent weapon you have is the throwing knives. Those are silent.
Wind resistance.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
If you want a fully silenced weapon, yeah, like throw a rock or something or a knife. But yeah, so I guess it is like normally what people compare it to is silenced weapons in other games or usually stealth games, and you get some of that. Then we can talk about in our game what is the noise level that a suppressed weapon should be. Maybe it carries a bit too far at the moment. Maybe we need to tone it down a little bit. It we have like put it more silenced that it probably should be in terms of realism, but we're not doing pure realism. So, but maybe we should take it further. Like the community can also tell us here, like instead of asking, for example, like, oh, are they where we intended to be? Like they are, but is that good enough? It's like because you can tell us like I don't feel like I can do this with it. I expect to be able to do this, but I can't because this thing keeps happening. And do you expect a fully silent weapon or do you expect an actual suppressed weapon? And then I also know that like maybe not everyone has fired a suppressed weapon, so they don't know what to expect in terms of realism, and they can only go about like what comes out of Hollywood, and where should we be in that scale? So because if it's not fun to play with, we should probably adjust until it is fun to play with. But it can't be broken in terms of game mechanics.
A very good answer. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a very good answer. And I have to say, like, one of the reasons that I love this game so much is because of how much attention to detail that they put into the weapons and armor and all those interactions with damages and the sound system that they have set up. I Yeah, it's unlike anything else. And so I'm glad that he's familiar with those um real life counterparts to how this stuff actually works. And I think one of the challenges that Arrowhead has, obviously they have their constraints within their gameplay and all the stuff that they're trying to maintain, but when it comes to feedback is they also have to sort through like, okay, well, how many people have any firearms experience whatsoever or have any knowledge and read about it or learned about it in some way, understand how decibels work and suppressors work, right? Because it's 100% true. A suppressor doesn't make a firearm silent. It just suppresses that, you know. So whenever you'll get plenty of opinions on stuff and that just don't take these things into account. And I think part of the player sentiment and like frustrations that can come through and that you'll see many times, or at least seems like, is that there are a lot of expectations in the game for the game to behave in a certain way that it is clearly not trying to do, and people get bent out of shape because they want it to behave like whatever other game, Halo or Call of Duty, or I don't know, you name it, right? This is not those games, and uh, there are plenty of things that the game does tell us, even just from like the packaging about being squad-based, tactical, and requiring cooperation and all this kind of stuff that people just ignore in a lot of the more vocal complaints that you could see. So, and I can kind of see his frustration like in his face, and I can kind of hear it in his voice, where it's like, you guys. It's always like he can't say it this way, but in his mind, it's like to me, I can feel the tension in that he's restraining of just like, gosh, this thing is so technical and it's so precise in so many ways with, you know, realistic elements balanced within gameplay and fun and all this stuff. And you know, it needs to be fun but like you said, without breaking gameplay mechanics. And the thing about something being fun is that is based heavily on expectations. And I think that there's a large number of players who have just got horribly mistaken expectations, and they want the game to behave like something that it never attempted to be and that it doesn't want to be, and then they get bent out of shape instead of asking, well, okay, well, it doesn't work the way that I'd like it to work, but how can it work, and how might I make this work and apply it and all this kind of stuff. And you know, um, they wear that free of thought title a little bit too, uh, a little bit too freely, a little too tightly.
Thank you so much. Asks, question, what is your favorite faction to fight?
Automatons. Easy answer. It's just
Why?
ah why? I don't know. It feels like the proper uh, the masochistic hiding behind the rock. Everything explodes around me. The kind of the PTSD depressions is kicking in, and just like it's okay. I like the way this suck. I'm one of those. So I don't know, and I like the aesthetics and the feeling that I get of just like this is like Terminator Future War, and the the feeling of being like a human in a war that will just destroy you, and the enemy is actually like red eyes, evil clankers. Uh, I don't know. It's one of those like enough childhood memories kind of builds up into the person you are today, and it kind of jams with me. For maybe a psychologist can explain it to me one day why I find that a nice feeling, but you
We'll
know.
dive into that next time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I do enjoy the automatons for a lot of the same reasons. Although recently I'm really getting into the Illuminate because I'm trying to replicate some Resident Evil 2 like survival horror style video game feels, and that's been a lot of fun. But hey, that was a great answer. What do you guys think? What are your favorite factions and why?
Asks, how do you decide how much damage a weapon does and what makes it light, mid, heavy, pen?
So the armor penetration is maybe the easiest to answer, which is it comes with the expectation and believability, which isn't not necessarily realism, but we wouldn't put like a small caliber weapon to have heavy pen or something. It just wouldn't be believable in the universe that we're painting up and the one you're acting in. So often it comes with like what makes sense for it to be armor penetration wise, and then we kind of balance it from there, because the weapon comes with like a promise and a fantasy tied together with it. And if you would have like a really high caliber, like let's say the anti-material rifle would have light pen, that would be like that's ridiculous. Of course it wouldn't. It's an anti-material rifle and it's high caliber, a lot of punching power and everything. So we go from there what makes sense and what feels good. And then when it comes to damage, here it's a little bit more fluent, but we also can't do like, oh, this sounds, feels, and looks like it would do a lot of damage. We can't just balance it by saying, yeah, but it has a large magazine, so it does little damage or something. Then we will look at other factors like how much ammunition does it have? How many magazines does it have? What's the reload time? How's the ergonomics? How's the sway? Um, and spread and drag, stuff like that. So it's about fulfilling the fantasy that comes with the weapon first and foremost, and then you kind of balance the other factors around it. It could also be that just someone proposes like, oh, this is a great fantasy with this type of weapon, then it comes with a magazine of 300 bullets. Each bullet does immense amounts of damage, explodes, and it's also very light. So and then we were just like, okay, let's not do that weapon. That just sounds like an everything weapon. And we don't want to do something that is just like better than any other weapon in the game in all fields. So it's also a little bit of just, you can't just do anything and then just balance it based on that. Sometimes you also have to choose what to do. Same thing as like if we do a tank, we can't balance it by not being sturdy. Or like not have a cannon or something. It's like the fantasy comes with a certain thing attached to it, and then you work from there. Or you say, oh, if this thing comes in here and it has to fulfill these things, then you ask yourself the question, is this something we put in the game or not? Long answer, but you know.
But a good one.
I can't wait for people to be bringing up the Senator, how that's a heavy penetration weapon, even though it's like a 357 looking thing. Maybe you might say it's like a what is it, like a Casel round, which is like, what is that, 4.456 or something? I forget offhand what it is. It's like between a 45 and a 50 caliber, right? I know in game the wiki lists both the Senator and the Verdict as 12 millimeter, even though the Verdict in-game description says 14 millimeter. And I'm sure that that's just got to do with their like internal game calculations to get the damage output that they want. Um, but that's kind of cool. Like I mean, I understand what he's saying. I don't really have a big issue with the Senator being heavy pin either. Given that it's a 6-shooter, and it's like a giant hand cannon type thing. But I'm sure that people will be complaining about that. And I'm kind of curious to know, I would be curious to know what the rationale was for that exactly, too. Hmm.
Asks, how do you guys decide on a theme for a new war bond?
Oh, uh, good question, chaotic answer, because it's a chaotic process. Uh, so it's a complicated process that sometimes starts with like you put 10 hours with 10 people to throw stuff at the wall, and then when you're out to lunch and someone just sits there, eats a burger, and just like, wait a minute, isn't this a great idea? And you're like, God damn it, you're right. That's the best idea I've ever heard. Scrap everything, which has happened a couple of times. And this you go with same thing like when you do an ideation process like this, like no idea is a bad idea, because enough bad ideas rolled coming from each other can eventually lead to a good idea. So you just go into every idea rabbit hole that you've ever had, and then eventually, hopefully, something pops up, which is if you just have a bunch of people that are varied enough, but and have some similar traits, the similar understanding is basically the game. Like, do they understand what's Helldivers? What are we doing here as a company? And then do they have all the different backgrounds and seen all the movies, etc.? So it can come from anywhere.
Well, I can say that we're very grateful for all the awesome war bonds, and I know that you and the team are cooking up lots more for us to see very, very soon. So for now, we're going to say thank you so much. You will return. You will be back here again asking more questions. So let us know what you'd like Niklas to answer next time. Anything you'd like to wrap up before we release you into the wild?
Just keep asking questions. Keep like some people think like, oh, we're like, do we like when the community always like has ideas or poses questions to us, or if you're upset or if you're happy, like all of it means you just care. So just keep it coming, and also keep it civil, preferably, and constructive, because it also means that more of you from the community will have more to go on. You can discuss a lot among yourselves. We'll be listening. We'll be reading. and
We'll be answering.
we'll be answering. Yeah. So just like as long as there's constantly communication going on in this, I'm perfectly happy. You don't have to be happy in the community, and then all I can ask is just like tell us why you're not happy, and we can see if there's something we can do for you.
There's definitely stuff we can do. Thank you again, Niklas. Thank you very much, Zelda. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Well, all right. No, that's a pretty good dev interview in my opinion. I mean, it was interesting to hear that their overall design philosophy fits that toolbox and analogy. That's basically what I had been under the working impression that they would try to do. I just didn't come up with that particular analogy. So that was very helpful. That's a good takeaway, and I hope people and players can hear that and kind of integrate that into their thinking about the game, because when you do, and at least in my opinion, it makes your expectations come more into alignment with what the game is trying to do and be, and then you're able to work around that and adjust accordingly, and then it becomes a lot more fun. And I'm also very interested about the suppressors. I didn't know that the changes, and I think he said they forgot to put that in the notes, but like now the suppressors uh, don't alert enemies the same way that a normal bullet does on that near miss, which is normally if you're within like 10 meters of an enemy when you shoot, the bullet is within 10 meters of them and it misses, then they notice it. So with suppressors no longer doing that, that's actually pretty cool. Be curious to maybe get my hands on that and do a little bit of field testing. And then of course the flag, with them being open to some kind of use, I think that radio signal booster idea could work. But, that was just me coming off the cuff. Obviously, I think it's going to be amazing. I don't know that that would be a great idea or not. That could trivialize jammers in a way that isn't good. But then again, the trade-off of giving up one of your support weapon slots or stratagem slots for the flag for that niche scenario, while it would be very helpful in max difficulty bot missions where there can be double jammers on top of each other, uh, but you're surrendering an entire stratagem slot for it. So that kind of has a good trade-off to it, just thinking off the cuff. But anyway, this was a great commentary. I love hearing stuff like this. I think these guys at Arrowhead do a really good job overall, and especially if you keep in mind like all of the realistic business realities and constraints on timing and resources and all that stuff. They clearly love the game. They love hearing from the community. They try to take things into consideration as much as they can. And I think it's just really cool that they're trying to progress not only the game and its systems and support and all that stuff, but their communication and their interaction with the community. So that was awesome. But yeah, there you go. There's the democratic conversation with Niklas, and some of my live off the cuff reactions to it. But tell me what you think. Are you excited? Does this give you any sort of hope? Are you disappointed? Did you want more? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.